Hello, I'm Dragst from Draconus Entertainment. I'm here to talk about Hexters, our new city building game here at Bamster's podcast.
Alright, and welcome back to another show, episode 105. I think we're calling this one a dual-titled episode. We're going to give you our comic shop talk first, and with me I've got TJ!
What's up, guys? How's everybody?
Or as they call him in Eternia, TJ. So, stick around because we're going to make the comic shop talk block here a little bit short. And as soon as we finish talking about the things we're going to hit on today, just a couple of quick topics, we're going to slide right into the interview with Dragst, or from Draconus Entertainment. No relation, I swear. And we're going to talk about their game Hexters that they have in early access on Steam. But first up here, we got our first topic. You were telling me about some casting news for Titans.
It's me, and of course I got to talk about the Titans because, it's the Titans. They just cast another character for the show, and not a member of the Titans, but a character who has a very long history with the Titans, that being 𝘿𝙧𝙬𝙬𝙧, aka the Chief, the founder of the Doom Patrol. And if any of you guys listening are big Titans fans like I am, you know the history that the Doom Patrol has. Beast Boy from the Titans started in the Doom Patrol. His first appearance was Doom Patrol issue 99 from 1965, 1966. And, he was a member of the Doom Patrol right before he was a member of the Titans. So clearly they're going to explore Gar Logan's past with the Doom Patrol before he was a Titan. So it's going to be very cool to see that. The actor who's playing the Chief is an actor named Bruno, I believe it's Bruno Bichir. He was on Narcos. So anybody who's watched that knows how rad that show was, how good everybody was in that. So it's going to be cool to see what he's going to bring to that. It's going to be interesting, though, Drac, because you're going to have a lot of people who may not know the history of these characters. And the Doom Patrol, what's really cool about them is they're this group of, misfit, outcast superheroes who don't have really conventional powers. And it's kind of like a group of outcast freaks. And their founder is a guy in a wheelchair. And there's a lot of people who are going to draw parallels to the X-Men and talk about how the Doom Patrol is a ripoff, but the Doom Patrol actually predates the X-Men by 3 months in 1963. So it's 2 months, rather. July was the Doom Patrol, September is the X-Men, 1963. So it's going to be neat to see what they do with it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, now, I'm not familiar with that, but when I heard Doom Patrol, I immediately started to think that these were going to be the bad guys.
No, that's the cool thing with the Doom Patrol is, since, they're the freaks, they're the outcasts in the DC universe, the classic Doom Patrol lineup, you've got, Steve Dayton, aka Mento, you've got Rita Farr, aka Elastigirl, well before the Pixar one, you've got Cliff Steele, the Robot Man, and then you also have the Negative Man. And Beast Boy was kind of like the junior member, and Steve and Rita, when they get married, they eventually adopt him. Then over the years, things get crazy, and there's a lot of really cool stuff that's done with the Doom Patrol in the really popular Titans material from the 80s. But they have this group of villains called the Brotherhood of Evil. And if you watch the Teen Titans cartoon from the early 2000s, Brotherhood of Evil gets used pretty heavily on there. They actually do an episode with the Doom Patrol as well. It's really cool villains. You have Monsieur Mala and the Brain, Madame Rouge, all these really cool, off the beaten path villains. They're not your typical, Lex Luthor or the Joker or Captain Cold or the Cheetah, things like that. So it's going to be a lot of fun to see if they really, because it's a web show, if they go kind of full on.
Well, and I was just going to ask, too, if you had to make some kind of predictions based on the casting that we've seen thus far, and now with this development, what kind or which characters do you think are likely to follow in casting announcements here in the future?
In terms of villains?
Yeah.
Oh, man. If they're doing this right, they're clearly going to announce whoever is going to voice Trigon, because Trigon's got to be CGI. Especially because, like the 80s Wolfman Perez Titans material, this team of Titans is going to come together based around Raven. Raven is who brought the Titans together in the 80s. To combat her father, Trigon. So that'll be super cool.
Well, I forgot too. Have they even said, is this a targeted age range? Like, are they targeting the viewership towards like young teens? And because I feel like almost
Flash, Arrow, Black Lightning, Legends Tomorrow. It's that audience.
Okay, yeah, because I almost felt like if you're targeting a teenage audience, doing something with demons may be a little hard to sell to some kind of network.
Nah. Well, also, that's the thing. It's the first original program for DC's streaming service. Is what this is.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, so it's going to be on their own streaming service.
Yeah, they can go full on, do whatever they want to.
See, another streaming service. Yeah, but you know what? They all add up. That's the problem. I want like no more than 2 or 3. If I'm being honest, I want 1. But I understand there needs to be competition so prices don't get out of crazy. But
no, I think if you do it right, obviously Trigon. I would love Deathstroke because despite the world thinking that Deathstroke is a Batman villain, no, he's a Titans villain, he's a Nightwing villain, at least as far as I'm concerned. So I would love to see him on there, especially because the Titans and Deathstroke have so much history together. If we're not going to get him, obviously, Brotherhood of Evil will be super cool. I would love to see that type of stuff. Mammoth, Jinx, Gizmo, all those really cool classic 80s villains. Brother Blood would be a lot of fun to do on there. Really do some cool horror stuff with those characters. So, I think there's potential for a lot. Also, if you do it right, especially with Robin being the leader for the show, you can do some really cool stuff with maybe some Batman villains that you wouldn't necessarily get to see in a live-action Batman show or maybe in one of the DC shows or in the movies, but would be great for something like this. So Dr. Light, obviously, it's a Titans show. You gotta have Dr. Light. So yeah, there's potential for really, really cool villains to show up because the Titans have always had really cool villains.
Yeah, well, and hopefully, since it's going to be on their own streaming service, that frees them up to do some things that maybe a regular network might have some hard time with.
One thing to think about too, because this is one of those things that not everybody's really discussed, is, we're talking about all these villains that are going to be on there because we have the team down. Robin, Starfire, Hawk and Dove, Beast Boy, Raven. But the other thing we haven't thought about is what heroes are going to guest star.
Oh, yeah. Well,
you got to have Aqualad guest star at some point, whether he's Aqualad or Tempest. You got to have Roy Harper guest star, whether he's Speedy or Arsenal. Donna Troy, you got to have guest star. And it's great because now that Wonder Woman is such a big character for the mainstream again, it's easy to have someone like Donna Troy guest star. So,
well, yeah, and I mean, you haven't even touched on the possibility or the fact that, especially because it's going to be a DC streaming service, that we may get to see Batman or Superman.
I'll tell you, I doubt we'll see Batman or Wonder Woman, but if they're smart, you get the actor who played Superman on Supergirl, get him to guest star to check in on the Titans, because I think that would be really cool. Because if you're doing this right, especially for someone like Robin on there, he doesn't necessarily need quote-unquote dad always checking in on him, but cool Uncle Clark is going to be a guy who's checking in not for Bruce, but to make sure the kids are okay and see if they need anything. And we've seen Superman do that before with the Titans over the years. So I think with Batman, he can't really admit that he's checking in because he cares, but with Superman, it's so very evident that he is.
Yeah, but it could be fun to see Batman show up. He doesn't even necessarily have to show up in the full suit, but maybe like a training type episode where he's there doing training and stuff like that with some of them.
That's the thing. I still don't believe they'll ever give him away. I don't believe that Warner Brothers is ever willingly going to give a live action Batman away when they can keep getting people to pay for it in the movie theaters.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, I don't get me wrong. I want to be proven wrong. I would love to be proven wrong in that. But now that Wonder Woman and Batman are so financially viable, they're not going to give them away for TV. But Superman is easy to, because people will still pay for Superman content, but getting Superman in a TV show still makes it feel like the TV shows matter.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I still think people would still pay to see,
we think
Batman and Wonder Woman, regardless of whether or not they're in a TV show. But
we think that, but we're not the ones making the decisions.
Right. Well, and on that note, I'm going to switch us over to our other topic for the day. And we both just went and saw Black Panther.
This is my second time seeing it.
Phenomenal movie. Can't say enough good things about it.
Top 5 MCU easily, maybe top 3.
And you hit on a point right there, which was something that I wanted to bring up. at some point throughout it, you constantly hear about how there aren't a lot of female-led or minority-led movies starring, and in this case, like almost, not entirely, but almost exclusive cast made up of minorities. And it's like, you hear studio execs talk about how, it's not financially viable. Well, yes. I'm loving the fact that Wonder Woman proved them wrong, and Black Panther has proven them wrong, and this is no longer an excuse. So get off your asses and get this stuff done, because there are so many characters out there. There's so many different possible stories to tell. And if I'm being honest, I enjoy the DC TV shows that are out there right now. But if you're watching any of them, if you're not watching Black Lightning, I'm not going to say it's like the best show that's out there, but it's probably the most grounded and most relatable show at this point. It's, you always hear about like the origins of Batman, where he's like out on the street and he's taking on cut purses and, street thugs and stuff like that. And that's, Black Lightning is doing that. He's on the streets. He's combating street level crime.
That's what Daredevil does on Netflix.
Yeah, and he's dealing with, there's a lot of stuff about some of the social issues and stuff that they're dealing with that he's directly confronting in that show. And it's a far more relatable show. As much as I enjoy the other DC shows, it's far more relatable, I think, to people than the other ones are.
Well, that's the thing. It's because it's touching on things that are relevant, and that is so important. What people don't realize is you're not just looking for a reflection of who you are, you're looking for a reflection of the world around you. That's why comic books have always been so good at being able to relate to the audience, but now they're even better at it because you've got people within our age range and younger who are becoming these creators who not only want to see these worlds expand and reflect the world that we all live in, but they know there are others like them who want the same thing. So that's what makes it makes it really cool. And, kind of shifting to Black Panther, I said it the other day, I said it on Twitter, if you follow me on there. You guys know I've been reading comic books all my life. My one sentence review of this movie, it was everything I've ever read and nothing I've ever seen. And that to me it's exactly what I went in for. The Christopher Priest Black Panther material from the initial Marvel Knights run is some of my favorite comics. Everett Ross comes out of that stuff right there, which is really cool. It really kind of modernizes Black Panther and brings him to the A level of the Marvel universe, which is in a lot of ways where T'Challa should be. It's what the Marvel Knights stuff did in general. It took a lot of B and C level Marvel heroes, especially at that point, like Daredevil and the Punisher and Black Panther and the Inhumans and Doctor Strange and all them, and really kind of made them relevant again. And what Christopher Priest did on that stuff is so very, very evident in Ryan Coogler's script and his directing. And I had said to a friend of mine about the movie, and this was something that really kind of hit me when I was leaving the theater. I'd said I've been reading these characters all my life, and I always said people who don't read comics won't understand why seeing these characters come to life has meant so much to me. But then I left the theater and saw all of these people of color beautifully dressed, showing off their culture, celebrating this character who means just as much to them as to me, but in a way I could never truly understand. And it was the most beautiful experience that I've ever had coming out of a superhero film. And this is what I want out of this. I want the world at large to see what it is that we know about these characters, to see that they reflect the world at large. And it's really special. It's really spectacular. And now it's time for Hollywood. It's time for the studio execs, and it's time for screenplay writers to get off their asses and really create content that isn't just action and adventure, but has something to say, has something meaningful, and is looking to change the world, because that's what superheroes do.
Yeah, and well, I mean, you talk about the folks going to see the movie were beautifully dressed, and there were so many points, different parts of the movie that I thought were done really beautifully and wonderfully, from the costuming and the looks and stuff of everybody there, to when I saw the first trailer for Black Panther, it looked really cool, but if I'm being honest, the music itself for the trailer, I was just kind of lukewarm, mediocre on it, but the music in the movie, it was great. It was phenomenal. And it hit the right tones. even I was looking at how they had decided to portray Wakanda as far as like how it looked, and it was so neat seeing how they had mixed what you would almost kind of expect a little bit of like a rural type village in with the technological advancements and, you know, the high rises and all that stuff. And it was still very much, it was very futuristic, but it was also still very much like parts of nature, part of it. It was really cool seeing that.
And it's because no one has touched their world, and that's what makes it so good. On the music, I'm kind of on the opposite side because I love film score. I love film scores, and I thought the music of the score to the film was outstanding.
Yep.
But I also loved the soundtrack. I loved what Kendrick Lamar did. I loved using Run the Jewels. I love that they took a score that sounds very African, and they have a soundtrack that's very African American. That was so smart doing that. Mm-hmm. You hit so many different ears with that things, but also you open so many different ears with both of those things, and that's the thing that this needs to do. This movie, it wasn't just opening ears and opening eyes, it was opening hearts. And you know, I've been reading this stuff forever. You guys hear me say it all the time. I know what this stuff is capable of, but this is really the first time that Hollywood saw what it was capable of. You know, so I'm still over the moon with this movie. This is my second time seeing it. I'm gonna see it a third time. It's easily top 5 MCU, no doubt. It's perfect. Start to finish.
Yeah, it was really well done. Everything about it looked and felt and sounded great. Mm-hmm. I gotta ask, I know I told you this earlier, and I'll say which one it is, but at least for yourself, I'm curious, what was your favorite character in the movie?
Oh man, Shuri. Shuri, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, his sister is by far and large, I think she was the coolest, funniest, best character in the film.
She's fun. She's silly. She's funny. She's charming.
Very energetic, and like
she's passionate. She's goofy. She's all of these things, and she's so really she's infectious, and it's every time she's on screen, you can't help but smile, and she was awesome.
And where can I get me some of them Panther gauntlets?
Yo, well, Hasbro makes them.
Oh, jeez.
So, yeah, you're doomed, man. You're doomed. No, there was nothing about this movie where I would say, well, you know what I would have changed? This was 100% start to finish. This is right up there for me with Spider-Man Homecoming, which for me is my favorite MCU film.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's high praise. So
yeah, to me, Spider-Man Homecoming is the most New York feeling superhero movie ever. Like I've been living in San Diego for 4 years now, and I've got major homesick vibes every time I watch Spider-Man Homecoming, and I can't imagine what it must have been like for someone who wanted to see themselves and their culture and their world represented the way it was in Black Panther. It must have been tenfold the way it was for me wanting to see New York represented the way it was in Spider-Man Homecoming. So I cannot sing more praise enough than I am about this movie. It's perfect.
And I'm already seeing some folks like cosplay from the movie and stuff, and it looks amazing.
But you know, it's amazing too because you have so many black cosplayers and cosplayers of color who are getting to infuse their culture and their background and their racial identity into their cosplay. Not that they couldn't to begin with, but now there's something about it that just is so cool because it's not just them doing it, it's them reflecting what Hollywood is trying to reflect back to them. And I mean, that's fucking awesome. So I'm here for it. I'm stoked, man. I'm super stoked.
So there you have it. We saw it. We loved it.
See it again. See it a third time. Show Hollywood that you want to see these movies.
I mean, we said the same thing with Wonder Woman. Like, this is hopefully just the beginning. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up, though, only because I know G will probably digitally kick me through the web spheres, but he wanted me to make sure that I brought up a few things because like there are some folks out there that are like, oh, it's the first Marvel Black Marvel character on screen. Well, what about Blade? I mean,
he's not the first Black Marvel character on screen. He is the first Black superhero with a titled film.
What about Blade?
Blade's not a superhero.
Well, okay, you could say anti-hero.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but the funny thing is,
Blade's not a superhero.
No, I get that, but I'm having a hard time getting this one out. Sorry. He also wanted me to bring up Blank Man.
It's funny that you should say that because I have been begging NECA on Twitter for Blank Man and other guy action figures. So, yeah, I'm calling you out with that, G. I love Blank Man, but again, this is the first time that the title superhero, the title Black superhero, isn't a joke either.
Oh, okay. Darn it.
Because
I just thought of another one, Steel.
The less said about Steel, the better. And look, right here, I love Meteor Man. I love Robert Townsend. I love that Big Daddy Kane is the bad guy. Another Bad Creation is his henchman. All of that is so cool, especially because of the era that I grew up in New York. So that's really cool there. But again, it's comedy. This is the first time that the title character.
What about Hancock? Will Smith?
Doesn't matter. That's because
he's not.
It's a joke. The movie's a comedy, and it's not adapted from the Marvel universe or the DC universe.
Well, no, it's not Marvel.
Or even from another publisher. People say, "Oh, what about Spawn? Spawn's an anti-hero."
Yeah, that's another good one.
Everything. It's a character you are aspiring to be.
But the hard part about saying "what about Spawn" is as much as I understand why. See, and I struggle with that because there were things about the movie that were good in that the way that the character looked and stuff like that. And I was a huge fan of Spawn, so it didn't matter how good or how bad it was. Like I was gonna enjoy it. So. And
that's fair. But again, there is a difference between Blade and Spawn and Black Panther. And really, it comes down to two things. Blade and Spawn aren't going to be Avengers. They're not superheroes. I mean, yeah, Blade was teaming up with the Midnight Suns and teaming up with Ghost Rider. And, we've seen him on the Spider-Man cartoon in the 90s and all that stuff. I get it. It doesn't mean he's a superhero.
All right, and on that note, we're going to cut it here, turn you over to the interview, so stay tuned after the break for our interview with Draconus Entertainment. And
no relation.
Yeah, and their game Hexters.
Hashtag Wakanda forever.
Hello, I'm Markku. I go by the nickname of Dragst in the internets, and I'm an indie game developer of the two-man team of Draconus Entertainment. We are running a game company here called Finland, North Europe. We just put up our city building game Hexters up to the Steam Early Access. Check it out in the Steam. I'm sure you'll see it's quite unique, both in mechanics and looks, and give it a spin.
All right. Welcome back. We are back from the break, and this time we have G with us for another interview.
Drac, I think something's broken on your end.
Oh, really?
There seems to be two of you.
I don't know, I'm looking around, I just see me.
All fine in here.
Okay, so there's two Draconuses. Anyways, hi everybody, yeah, it's me, G, and apparently I'm with Draconus interviewing Draconus, or Dragst, or Markku.
Hello.
What was that ad, I think for like some gum or something back in the 80s or 90s? Double the pleasure, double the fun?
If you say so.
Yeah, well, I guess other Dragst, welcome, and I guess you're here to talk about your little game, so Hexters. Let's go straight into it. Tell us everything about the game.
Everything. All right, hold your horses. Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me in here. And so I'm Dragst, or my real name is Markku. I'm from Finland, and we are having these two men indie indie game company called Draconus Entertainment. That's a joke you had earlier. And we just released the first version of our new game Hexters in Steam Early Access, I think 16th of December. That's about 1.5 months ago. And what can I say? It's a city building genre with some action elements. We have some like economy management, logistics, enemies, bit of a tower defense going in there. And we are having this kind of like, I don't know, new wave retro look. We have really low amount of polygons in there, so the graphics look kind of like blocky, a bit like Darwinia, if you know the game from the Intervention software, maybe I think 2006, maybe. I don't know if you ever seen the game.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the game. It does hit that 80s retro future cyberspace feel with all the polygons. Yeah, it's a little bit of a lawnmower man in it as well, you know. But I'm liking it, possibly because I'm old.
Yeah, well, I guess that's half what we went for. We also have the trailer, which is in like this VHS 80s style, and we got a really, really good amount of positive feedback from the trailer, and I'm actually quite proud of that.
I really loved the sense of humor in the trailer. That was awesome.
Yeah, thanks, man. And what else? What else can I say? Yeah, well, the development has been interesting cycle. We have actually both made games for most of our adult lives. For me, that's like almost 20 years for now. Jeez, talk about getting old. Yeah, it's been interesting. I think the city building genre is really like hot topic right now, like crafting and survival genres as well, especially in the indie communities. And I don't know, we are a bit of an old ball, I think, with the game, because it's quite not maybe what you expect actually from the city building genre. I just actually checked the stream. What was his name again? Ant Plays Games, I think. I need to recheck that. Well, anyway, and he had really fun with the game, and one of his comments in the beginning was like, "This is a really weird game. I like it." So I guess that's what we're looking for. We have really worked hard to make something actually unique. It looks a bit unique. I don't know, it's like 100% unique, because you can see a bit of a Tron, you can see a bit of a Darwinia, maybe you mentioned the lawnmower man earlier. But still, I think there's nothing quite on the market right now which looks exactly like Hexters.
Well, you've said we a couple of times, so how many folks are part of your development team?
2, exactly 2. It's just me and my friend Samsa, who is sadly not present right now. He has a family to attend to, so it's just me this time, maybe next time. And he is mostly the tech guy. He's absolutely brilliant programmer. He has been working, for example, for the first PS3 Unity game, Rochard. And do note that that was the time when the Unity did not really have the PS3 support just yet, so he was kind of like building it when he was working on the game earlier. That has sadly nothing to do with Draconus Entertainment, but that's one big title in his sleeve, so to speak. And maybe just a quick word for myself. I guess you could call me Maverick. I've always done some form of games. 20 years ago, I made some like budget games to some American, like, you know, small game companies. They kind of like outsourced. I don't know if you can get it, if you can really say outsource in that sense, but still we had a pretty good start from the beginning, and I've been working a little bit on even on the AAA side. I worked at Bugbear Entertainment in, I think, 2006. I worked on the Flat Out Ultimate Carnage, and I've been in one of these kind of like kids games companies doing small flash games, and I worked in another company, actually not really worked in a sense that I've been worker. I actually was involved in the business side as well. We did this a game called Alien Robot Monsters, which is, I think, I'm quite proud of that game name actually.
That's actually a pretty good name.
Yeah, and it's a tower defense game. You can find it on Steam for really cheap. I think it's even as a full price. I think it's like $6 or something, €6, and we got like 36 levels. It has tons of value in that sense, and we also got really good feedback for example, for the voice acting, and we're using this one guy from States. I think I don't remember quite. No, actually, I do remember. His company is called Voice of Reason. He's called 𝘲𝙤𝙢𝙤𝙘 𝙎𝙝𝙎. He's absolutely a fantastic guy. He always delivers almost everything you want in a one go, and it's just fantastic working with people like that. And he's probably not listening this, but hi, 𝘲𝙤𝙢, anyway. And what else? Yeah, I guess I could say that I've been around a lot. I know quite a lot of names in Finnish game development scene, but I've been a bit unlucky. I always wanted to do my own thing, and I have quite a few of actually failed projects. Well, not failed, maybe failed only in the sense that I never saw daylight, and I'm not so sure if they ever will, but I guess that's part of the experience.
But sorry, isn't that part of the whole thing? You know, once you get into developing games, you end up having quite a few projects, and some never go anywhere, but that's still part of the whole development, as a person, as a developer. You make the projects, you see where they end, and if they don't come out, they don't come out, but some of it carries on into the next games.
That's an interesting take. I think someone said that doing games is a bit like doing good kebab. So it's tedious to do, and you can do it, but that really doesn't mean that you're doing it right. So
interesting comparison, yeah.
But let's say that the time I put into those failed projects has not quite been a small amount. I'm talking like years, and that's on me, and that's not something I'm not particularly proud of, but I'm quite proud of actually what we have now achieved. We are currently running the company with my friend Samsa, and we don't have any like external funding or any like investors. It's really just funded by him and me, and of course we are doing some like, should I say, how should I put it, contract work, but we are like full-time. Managed to reach the situation where we can actually work full-time in our own company, and I'm quite proud of that.
That's a good place to be. That's definitely a good place to be.
And on that note, I actually wanted to take it back a second to the company name, because that's how our attention was brought to you guys. And I know that the name Draconus is not necessarily unique. I've seen it used throughout the years, though usually when I see it, it's spelled with an IS at the end instead of a US, like the way that I do. Out of curiosity, where did you guys come up with the name?
Well, I gotta say, there's actually nothing particular spectacular to tell about that name. Let me think. I think it actually goes more like into my own nickname, Dragst, which is actually, okay, this is a dumb story, but I'll tell you for exactly that reason. I think I was like on the 4th grade or something, and I was really heavy into role-playing, like, you know, the old school tabletop gaming. And I think we were at my friend's house once playing Rolemaster, I think. And I came up with this crazy character, which was like, he had lycanthropy. So, lycanthropy? I'm not actually sure how you pronounce that, but you know, the thing that turns you into a werewolf or something like that. Yeah, so, but I was actually not transforming into a werewolf. There was this strange humanoid silver dragon thing my character was turning into, and my friend just said that, okay, here is the name now. Okay, quickly, give me a name for your character. And I really liked dragons back then, don't we all? And I think my friend has this poster of a Dragster on his wall. And those two things just collided in the moment that I just clumsily came up with the like Dragst, and it kind of stick. So I think that I've been having that nickname for like 25 years already. So I think that's the dragon theme or something just kind of like continued from that. And actually even I didn't know back then, even I started with the C64, good old C64, and I think Commodore had this one game actually called like Draconus Cult of the Worm or something like this, but I didn't know that actually before putting up the company called Draconus Entertainment.
That's funny because the name for me came from an old D&D character that I played. Actually played for quite a few years. Yeah, I started him back in, I think it was the early 90s is when I started playing that character, and he was an elven fighter thief. It worked out to be more like a bounty hunter, but I played that character for years, and I guess his personality matched mine quite a bit in many occasions, and it became a nickname that just stuck with me. So, that's cool to hear that there's another guy out there using the name, and it came from a tabletop area.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, talk about a coincidence. Damn.
I would also say you're kind of showing your age here, because that game is from 1988, so ooh. But yeah, good old C64, Atari, and ZX Spectrum even.
Yeah, God bless those times.
Dude, I'm not kidding. I recently spoke to a guy who's still developing Commodore 64 games.
Yeah, I think they actually just released one game for the C64, and I don't mean like released as a joke in the internet. They really have the box and everything.
Oh yeah, I've seen at least one company, and here we use the term company lightly, but one organization who is for profit and releases Commodore 64 games and various 8-bit games. So they have the whole, you can give them your game, they'll convert it to all the other 8-bit platforms.
How good is that? How good is that?
I was speechless. I was literally, when I saw it, I was just sat there going, that's awesome. I'm probably not going to buy any of their products, but that is freaking awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I guess part of me is kind of like stuck in the 8-bit times. That's actually, this gives me a good way to describe the game flow of Hexters is actually a little bit, like I told you earlier, it's quite not maybe what you expect from the city building genre. I guess there's like a story involved. Sorry, there goes my voice. I'm recovering from the mother of all flus. And there's a story elements in the game. There are characters with quite a lot of dialogue. Maybe, I don't know, maybe too much for some people, but I come a little bit from the theater and opera background, so I guess that's on me. I just love dialogue. So, and what else? I'd say these, as I told you, the game is in early access. We are quite not there yet. We only have 3 levels for now, but I dare to say that those 3 levels are, quite polished already, especially considering our resources. And I think there's almost like 6 hours of gameplay. Depends a little bit how much you decide to explore and use all the features you found in the levels. If you just know what you're doing, maybe you can fly through the levels a little bit quicker. But I think that's quite good. I have to say that we we had a really long discussion if we should go into the early access or not, because we all know early access has a bit of a bad reputation, and for a reason. There is a lot of garbage in there, to be perfectly honest. And even I could say that I'm really, really, careful about buying the early access titles, despite of seeing quite a lot of stuff that I would like to buy, especially genre-wise.
I think we mentioned it in, 2 episodes ago, that last year Steam registered about 7,500 titles, most of them in early access, and a disproportionate amount of them are really not actual games, not really worth spending any money on. Asset flips, I think you referenced that in your trailer. So
yes, I did.
it is a risk going out and say, oh, we're on early access in Steam. People will think, okay, so you're not serious. Nah, some are. You seem to have taken that route with actually being serious and put out a good-looking product, I would even go so far as to say. And yes, you are honest about that it is also early days for the game. I think the version that shows is 0.1.1.
Actually, we just uploaded a new version, so technically it's 0.1.2 now. But yeah, just...
Okay, I stand corrected. Yeah, but no, it's a nice way to tell people that it is early access, because there are also the people who pick them up and go, oh, this game was, it's 6 hours and only 3 of the 5 levels or something even worked, and it's bad, never play this game, and give you a negative review. But at least they can see, no, it is because this is early on, you're not there yet. And, early access exists for a reason.
Yeah, I think the one of the most important things to maybe make a difference between our EA version and the many others is that everything you see is kind of like final. There is really nothing, like placeholder stuff or bizarre UI elements which just doesn't work, or just having to read this like bizarre documentation to actually see what you have to do. No, of course we also got a room for improvement. We actually, almost every stream I see someone playing the game, I get like maybe 2 to 3 things I see from the experience of seeing someone playing the game, that okay, maybe we could try to improve that bit a little bit. If some guy is, for example, wondering where exactly do you want to where exactly can you do the tasks that the quest manager or the whatever you call it, the campaign showing you the objectives wants to do it, and you can improve on that. And those are the easy fixes. Those are really the easy fixes, because you can see directly from the experience that, okay, that guy has a little bit of a problem figuring out. And I give you one good example. Actually, the latest version we just uploaded, and it has a really, really big update on the connection of nodes. These nodes are practically the power... Hold on, what you call it in English?
The power pylons?
Yeah, power pylons, whatever. The things that connect to each other to transfer power from location A to location B. So we call them nodes in our game. The game is kind of like... We have this really cheesy, cyberspace, except we call it cyberscape, just for laughs. And everything is kind of like, happening inside a computer. To be honest, it has absolutely nothing to do with that. We just use the terminology as a joke, Of course, there's some things that actually correlates. For example, the basic resources are like bits, which you can improve into bytes, and then you can use those bytes to build triangles and so forth. These kind of things that are on a certain concept level, they are true, but the actual the connection between the representation and the concept is actually just bollocks.
Well, and so you're getting in a little bit to the mechanics there. Can you expand on that maybe a little more about, you mentioned the different aspects with there being some story and tower defense and city building. So how exactly does that all work within the bounds of the game?
Yeah, sure. Let's start from the beginning of the project, actually. We had this one other project, which I'm actually not going to discuss anymore than that. But when we started doing this game, we just decided that we want to do something like Anno series. I don't know if you know the Anno series from the Blue Byte, the German big...
I've seen it.
I played it a bit, yes.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly those, like, every Anno has this number which indicates a year. I think the first one, like, 428 or something like that. Well, it's not important. But anyway, we kind of like the series. I actually like all the versions of the game. I mean the real versions, not the mobile version, of course, because I couldn't care less. But then the another series we kind of like drew some inspiration from is the Settlers series, and I'm really talking about the old school, like Amiga times series, like Settlers 2 and Settlers 1.
Those were the best ones.
Yep, absolutely. And in those games, maybe some people are not aware, but you had to do these. Basically, you build the flags and you create roads between the flags, and then there are these small guys who just transfer the goods between those flags. So you kind of create this chain of logistics, and I think those elements have been something that we really started to build on. And of course, quite quickly the game Hexters went into its own direction, into its, I hope, unique direction. The characters present are they are actually software. There's the advisor program who introduces you into the game. In the first few levels, they pretty much actually act as a tutorial. And I think the latest review in Steam, the public review, we got a negative review out of that, because that guy really felt that the game is just railroading him hard instead of just, letting him do what he wants. And fair enough. I don't quite do the game, I don't quite do the games or design. I'm more responsible for the design of the game. So I don't think it's a viable goal to make a game that appeals to everyone. That's not quite how I see it, and I'm quite fond of the fact that almost all the feedback we get is in some form positive. Even the negative ones have some positive things in them, and I'm actually quite happy about that.
I was reading those comments because that's part of the prep work going into these things. What did other people think? And one thing I took away from it is the game at this point is very much campaign based. There's level 1, level 2, level 3, and there's not a free play mode. There isn't just sit down and build a community, a city with others around you. There isn't an evil program or virtual machine or whatever that would be fighting against you, and then you can just play forever. And I think reactions like that they're annoyed with all the dialogue, that one person was annoyed with all the dialogue and being told what to do and when to do it and how to do it, that might have been simply a person who's more into those free play games. So that could be something down the line, perhaps a more free play sandboxy style instead of campaigns, or in parallel to the campaigns, I should say.
Yeah, absolutely. We have the free play mode pretty much developed from the beginning, but the game, the free play isn't quite there yet. So one of the things to understand is, for example, all the maps in Hexters are actually procedurally generated. We do not have a level generator in that sense that you create levels, there's a mountain. Yeah, we can do some of that stuff in our engine, the Unity we are using, as everyone else. But that's one of the reasons we decided to go the procedural route, because the free play can be pretty much, have everything in them. And we are hoping to expose as much of the parameters for the gamers to create new levels and experiences for them, maybe even down the line. We also had even some kind of weekly level or weekly challenge, randomly generated levels where you can have various goals, maybe time-based goals, maybe combat-based goals, economic goals, whatever, and even have those things as the Steam leaderboards. So that would be interesting, but we are not quite there yet, because even though we have those negative points in the Steam, we don't have that much reviews just yet. But there's one thing I would like to point out from that criticism. All the downsides have been about different things. All the negative reviews have, they don't have really everyone complaining about the same thing. Everyone has his own gripes. One guy didn't like the amount of dialogue. Fair enough. One guy had a MacBook which had a little bit of a problem running the game. Fair enough. We actually fixed that partially, I hope, by implementing more a low graphics mode. But that's only a partial solution. And what was the third guy complaining about? I think he said that the game is too early access, which is funny to me, because I dare to say that what becomes of the early access standards and titles, we are quite high on that scale, in my opinion. Like I said, we don't have like these series crashes. Hopefully we don't have mostly crashes at all. We don't have placeholder stuff. Even when you play all the levels you can in the game, you get this, screen saying, "Oh no, you actually reached the end of this current early access version. I'm sorry, but thanks for playing, and we're really happy that you gave it a go." And like I said, you really have to play for hours to actually even now reach that point. And so yeah, that's one perspective in the negative reviews. And I think the negative reviews are important as a developer, because, for example, you can get ideas from there. You can get like how should I say? Especially if people give negative reviews for the same reasons, then you can actually start drawing from those reviews. But of course, we all have to remember that when you do something like a game, especially a little bit of a, should I say, bizarre game like ours, you have to understand that everybody's going to have an opinion, and not all those opinions are going to be positive, and you just have to live with that. And it's part of the process, it's part of the, should I say, game. And I don't mind. That's actually how it should be.
If I can interject a small observation also, when you're developing a game, just remember people are more likely to leave negative feedback than positive feedback.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's one of those slight headaches. Humans are biased. They don't even notice it. Those darn humans.
Mortals.
Well, but the cool thing to hear is, and I think it's an important thing, at least for my own opinion as a developer, is that you can take a look at that negative feedback and pull useful information out of it. Of course, it's always nice if the person leaving the negative feedback is doing it in a constructive way, but I think it's still important to be able to look at that and say, oh, okay, so amongst all the other things that they're saying here, this is the core of the problem, and here's something we can maybe do to address that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the important thing to remember, that there's a big difference between just pure hatred or negativity to an actual negative criticism. I'll give you an example. I think we are really positive in Steam with the Alien Robot Monsters game I mentioned earlier. That's sadly not the game by Draconus, but it's a game by me anyway, so I still use it as a bit of a benchmark of what I have done lately. So I think the the most unuseful negative piece of review we had in there was this one guy, without punctuation, without capitalization, just wrote, "Loser trash, get help." And I gotta say, I laughed when I read that, because that's just I don't know, what can you do except laugh in that situation?
Yeah, it's kind of a waste of the person's time and energy. If you've got an issue with it, at least say what the issue is.
Yeah, exactly. And also, like I mentioned before, it's part of the game. You can't do this. You can't develop games if you are like weak-skinned about negative feedback, especially in how the world is. As you mentioned before, people are much more keen on leaving negative feedback. They are most likely to point out the flaws, and that's how things are. You just have to accept that. And I'm an adult, and I'm reaching my 40s. I really don't care about what other people think. In that sense, what you might think as when you're like 15 or 16, where there's still social pressure to think about, or actually the illusion of a social pressure to think in a similar fashion to the people you want to associate yourself with. I don't care. I always actually went with my own path, and fortunately I got a friend with me right now, and I'm really hoping we can do a big thing out of Hexters. We can have really good plans for it, but of course we have to be also realistic. We have to adjust those plans based on how many sales we make and all that. We are still trying to run a viable business, and we still have to get the money for the rent and for the food and all that, and provide for our families. So it has to be realistic, but I think we're quite optimistic about that right now, because we really haven't made any marketing campaigns or anything like that just yet, because we are early access. It's a strategy we decided to do. We are not pushing out like this, should I say, hardcore amount of marketing things, like pushing it to the streamers or the press or something like that. No, we are actually quite not there yet. We want to work for the game first. We want to, polish those, should I say, the worst little annoyances away, which I think we actually already managed to do. We are a bit of a late for the next level. Sadly, it's not quite good yet, and it's quite not finished yet. So our original plan to release the level 4 in January, we missed that window, but I don't think that's a problem, because for example, if you look our developer log, either at the Steam forums or then at our own forums, forum.draconus.com, you can see that we have been quite active with the patches and hotfixes, and we try to list mostly all of those things that we are actually improved or fixed or changed in there. So there is quite a good roadmap to follow on that. How are we actually working on this game? So that should give the potential players as well some sort of sense of, okay, we are actually working on this game. We don't have one vague patch per month. No, we are actually doing even maybe weekly patches, or maybe 3 times in a week. We just released patch 2 days ago, and I'm actually ready to release the next patch already. So that's the level of our professionalism, or at least I'd like to think so.
Oh, that kind of activity is great. Plus, the roadmap that's there is a great thing that helps with folks with, especially with things like expectation management.
Yeah.
So you were talking about how you guys approach, the reviews and the development process and stuff, and it made me think more about the sense of humor that's in the trailer, and you've talked about the story that's involved in the game. Does that sense of humor follow through with the story? Is there quite a bit of that in there as well?
Yeah, I'd like to think so. There's one joke when the first elements of the combat are introduced, and one of the characters says that this is horrible, and then the other guy says, "Oh yeah, this is cool," and then they have this banter about how can you enjoy this? Those things want to tear us to shreds. And this one, the other guy just replied, "Sure, I can enjoy it. It's in 3D," which is just slapstick humor right there. But that kind of things, and I'd like to build up the dynamics between the characters. As I mentioned before, I come a little bit from the theater background, opera background, so there's this huge influence on me of having these, should I say, unique personalities with their quirks, with their way of speech. For example, there's this program you need in the game to actually build any defenses or the combat things. He's the quartermaster. His name is Iceman, and he, we don't really have the speech in the game. We have this this old school alternating pitch shifting just noise they have made. But even then, there are some colors there. The advisor sounds different from the combat guy. The scout sounds different from the combat guy, and you can still build personality even without actually have them talking, by just the color of their voice that not voice, but the noise they are actually making. And I'm also trying to build the character throughout the dialogue, of course. For example, the combat guy talks in a really aggressive way. He is a bit of abusive. He just called these other things when you found him, you puny inferior programs and stuff like that. And the scout guy is really this, stoic character who doesn't really speak much. He just speaks in a really short, to the point sentences, which is kind of, maybe that's the the Finnish, a bit of a Finnish influence in there, or actually at least the cliche of the Finnish. I think the Finnish people are viewed a little bit outside our own country, we are quite quiet, and we don't like to talk, and we don't like to talk even to each other. I don't know if you have any of that image out of Finnish people, but that's the cliche, at least I'd like to build on. And stereotypes and cliches are so fun to build on.
As a Scandinavian, I would just say, yeah, that's the image we have of the Finns.
Yeah, there you go.
When you talk about stereotypes, you were talking about opera, and the thing that came to mind for me when you mentioned that background is now I want to know if there's some kind of virus that's like some large female Viking riding on a chariot with like an 8-bit or 16-bit version of the what is it, Flight of the Bumblebee song playing in the background as she comes in to try and trash your city.
Oh, you're giving me too many good ideas. I can't tell you right now, but let's see.
Well, polygons and Flight of the Bumblebee, it gets a little bit too close to Elite, I would almost say.
Oh, I was just going to ask, so what are some of the future plans that you can discuss about things that you want to include in future updates?
Yeah, sure. I actually, let me get back just a little bit to the features you actually asked me about before I sidetracked into the reviews and stuff. As I mentioned, we have the city building aspect of the game. There goes my voice again. Apologies. We have the economy. Of course, we don't have money, but we have resources. You have to extract resources from the surroundings. Then you have the refinement processes. You have to refine those basic resources into more advanced resources. And of course, the more complex buildings and stuff you need, the more complex and more crafted resources you need. And one thing I'm particularly proud of is that even with these 3 levels, and this is something I really try to work on as far as possible, is that every level actually introduces you something new. Some new, completely new features, or something completely new in a sense of, for example, I think these days, this is just my personal opinion, not Draconus Entertainment's opinion, but I think games are a little bit simple these days. I get the feeling from most of the games that, should I say that people don't care putting that much effort into it anymore? Or I don't know if that's the correct way of actually describing what I'm feeling from the games. But for example, if you can have a nice game. I don't mean that all games are bad or anything like that. That's actually not what I'm talking about. I'm meaning more like the ideas, the concepts that, for example, if you have an indie game going the Metroidvania genre, you pretty much know how the game works, even without ever actually playing it, if you know what I mean. So the genres are actually quite I think locked down, which is something of a problem if you actually want to experience new things, which is, I think, experiences new things these days with the games is really hard thing to do. Even as a gamer, I play quite a lot. I actually play almost everything else except racing games or sport games, unless the sports are like Blood Bowl or something like this, which is a completely different topic then. But that's one thing I'm really pushing into, that we had this one negative review about the simple mechanics. Okay, fair enough. The guy had 30 minutes recorded gameplay in the review. Okay, sure, but you can't reach the level 3 in that time, and so you are actually missing out 80% of the features you are introduced into with the current version. And that's only those 3, 3 actually, the 3 first levels. And now to get actually to the topic you asked me about, the future plans. The next level we are introducing is actually going to introduce research. We are going to introduce the technology tree into the game. And this is an important thing to do, not just about making it interesting to the gamers or the players, but also to act more like a platform to the future versions to actually introduce completely new features, which I hope, as I mentioned before, we can still continue to introduce in every level. Maybe not every level, but more or less, to avoid making the game, should I say, like a mechanical, repetitive experience, which most games easily are these days. You are introduced stuff and then you just build on those stuff and then you just repeat it 1,000 times and that's the game. But yeah, that's of the main features of the next big patch, or the next level we are going to introduce hopefully in a couple of weeks.
Gating features is standard nowadays. I'm a little bit surprised people would play 1 level, 2 level and go, oh, there's no content, because the concept of gating features on levels, on accomplishments, is a standard thing these days. I know some games at least they go the route of having a tutorial that you can skip, and that gates some of the most basic features, but Nah, I would say players should be used to this by now.
Yeah, it's the short attention span. They've got to have it now. Gimme. But I found it interesting, at least when I was looking at this, that you're combining the cityscape building with the tower defense, and you've got your research trees. Which the thing about this that I like, and I've seen this some with some shooting games recently, where they're combining the first person element with a strategy element. And like the base building and stuff like that, where you have a player who can sit back and look at it from like an RTS perspective and give people objectives and stuff. So yeah, the core genres have been defined for a long time, but it's neat to see games like yours that are starting to combine maybe more than one genre or blend the lines between them to give a more interesting, like in a new playthrough.
Yeah, there's one actually an interesting thing to understand, that the combining features is actually a tricky thing to do, because just because you take cool thing called A and cool thing called B and you mash them together doesn't actually mean that you're going to have this cool new thing C. And most of the games actually of this genre, I don't think the combat itself is that interesting, and that was one of the challenges we actually faced, that because, for example, the older Anno games, which I mentioned before, had this like naval combat between ships, and it was the absolutely most uninteresting feature of the game, because what I played the game for was like optimizing the production chains, optimizing the logistics routes and all that, and we tried to build the game, the Hexters, on that idea that, okay, we're gonna have combat, we have this we haven't actually described it as a virus, but it's just this asymmetrical force called Scourge in the game, which is basically just this hostile thing that spawns all kinds of monsters, which then are attracted to the light of your nodes. So actually this creates this situation that the more you expand, the more you attract the monsters. So I don't think there's ever going to be like, which you mentioned before, like an evil city builder or anything like that. I don't think there's ever going to be like evil Hexters or anything. The Hexters are actually the small guys, a little bit like in Darwinia there was this Darwinians. It's a little bit of the same thing. And one of the should I say the cornerstones of the design was also that you can't directly control anything in the world. So this was something that we really wanted to decide early on. Granted, we have made some actually a few should I say holes into that decision. For example, the exploration drone you need to control manually. Later on you can actually build a 𝑏itmobile which you can then manually control, and you can load it up with bits. That's what it's called, 𝑏itmobile, haha. And you can also transport Hexters with that, and you can actually like give manual waypoints with that, because we just realized quite early in the development that just building the buildings and doing the, designating the building plans and designating the production chains does not actually have that much interest later on. So we need to engage the player in different sense as well. But actually that the funny thing is that surprisingly enough, that all seems to take quite a lot of attention actually away from the core gameplay, if you could call the harvesting and the resourcing and the logistics management the core gameplay, which I intended it to be. And for example, the stream I just mentioned earlier of watching today, I think it was like over 3 hours. The guy was playing the third level, which is the first, like the real level. It's much more larger than the first two tutorial levels. And he just spent so much time going around with the scouting drone and driving the 𝑏itmobile. He was so happy of having a truck which he can actually manually control, and I think he could have like played through the map maybe 1 hour faster, but I don't mind. That's what I want to see. I want to see people like find something from the game that maybe you haven't actually even wanted to have that much weight in the design, but there is just so many variables and possibilities for gamers to actually be engaged on. And different people have different interests and all that. So I'm actually quite happy about that, and I really hope I can keep it up with the design, and we can build the game in the direction that whatever your interests are, you can find something from there. I don't mean in a sense of it's a little bit of something for everyone. No, that's garbage to me. I think what I'm trying to say that I'm really hoping that the experience is unique enough so you can find something for yourself from there. Maybe you want to build more defenses, maybe you want more combat, maybe especially in the free when we can hopefully introduce the free play later on, you can make those levels more like to your likings. Maybe you want to disable the enemies completely, maybe you want to completely just put your efforts into building or expanding or trying to reach the exit in time or whatever. There are so many possibilities.
Well, now, do you guys plan to have anything in place for like a modding community for anyone to be able to add things to the game at all, or no?
Let me be honest. The short version, no. But you probably want me to expand on that.
Well, I only ask because it's something that just kind of comes to mind with games like this that I see, depending on the developer, sometimes they have that and the community will make a bunch of different maps or whatnot for people to play through. But I have no idea how complicated it is to actually build something, put something like that in the game for the players to use.
Well, it's quite complex. It usually means that you need to more or less like expose all the data and the structures of the game to something that you can actually edit, like text files or data files and stuff like that. Well, technically that's not a problem, and I think the fairest thing to say that I don't care about modding myself. So I know that's maybe not the best argument against not having a mod support, but that's the main argument, that I'm much more interested in doing a proper story. I'm much more interested about doing the goal-oriented levels. I don't play sandbox games myself. I understand the appeal, but I just don't care, to be honest. I always need some kind of goal. I don't have that much time to put in the gaming, unfortunately, as an adult. When I those times when you could just wake up, start playing, and then stop playing and go sleep are just...
Oh man, I miss those days.
Yeah, it's just not like that anymore. For good or bad, who knows? But yeah, that's something that we decided quite early, that we are not going to have the mod support. Of course, depending on the pressure and depending on all kinds of things like sales and amount of feedback we get, I don't say like no ever, but for me that's just one of the most uninteresting things that we can actually just do right now.
So from what I'm gathering is we should not expect to see like a multiplayer, at least not a player versus player scenario in this game.
No, but actually co-op was actually something of the first things that we decided that we actually would like to have. And I think one of the streamers just in one short sentence that said that it would be so awesome if you could just play the game with your friend. And I agree. I think I play quite a lot of competitive games like Overwatch. This is taking way too many hours of my hours. I just say that I don't have. And I know the appeal of competing against other players. However, I think as a complete experience, I enjoy much more playing against the game or the environment with my friends, and that's something I really, really would like to see in Hexters. But I have to be honest, that's quite a hurdle to tackle, so to say. And let's say that we have to make quite a lot of sales to actually make that a viable goal. And the injecting a multiplayer feature into the game as it is now, that won't be like, just a few weeks. I think that's more like months of extra work, because there's just much more complex layers of things to go on when you actually start doing multiplayer stuff.
Oh yeah, definitely. Just don't make the same mistake that Subnautica just released. They made a mistake early on by not designing for it, source code wise. So it's been a featured request there for eternity, and they basically keep saying no, perhaps, but no, because they did simply a complete rewrite of their game. So it's one of those things. Keep it in mind at least. But yeah, it's a big,
absolutely
big job to do.
Absolutely, and I'm really hoping to see that in Hexters, as I mentioned before. And thanks for asking me for that. But as I mentioned, we are really not quite there yet to actually have it viable.
I have faith in you getting there. Let's put it that way.
Thank you very much. I hope you're right. And
but no,
as I mentioned, even the marketing guys we have some preliminary number discussions with have been quite keen of actually getting to market our game, because they like the trailer and they like how it feels and seems like. And I'm quite happy about it, because it sounds like, okay, we made some right choices in here.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that made me actually think of the whole multiplayer thing, you mentioned Settlers, the old ones. And in that, there was the cute little thing. You talked about you can put down flags and then it makes little pathways between the flags. And you could actually make a flag that was close to an enemy road. Just if the enemy road was just close enough to a border, you could put a flag on your side and link their road to your flag, and then that way tap into their resources. It was a nice little workaround. Yeah, let's call it a workaround. Yeah, let's use that word for it. And then get the enemy to build all your forts for you.
Nice. I think the original Settlers have split screen, if I remember right.
Has what, sorry?
A split screen multiplayer on the same computers, at least on the Amiga version.
I think the Amiga version had a split screen option, yeah. Yeah, back when we were still probably way too old to spend that much time playing video games even then.
Yeah.
Okay, Drax kind of already hinted at it. We kind of need to wrap up, because he's right about the time. Sorry, mate.
All right.
Because otherwise we'll end up talking for hours and hours, and it's a podcast, we can go on for a while, but
about the good old times.
Yeah. So, weird question, since Drac apparently seems to think that I should ask it. Here goes, and I don't know if it works in Finland, but I hope it does. Dragst, Markku, what is your favorite kind of bacon? How do you want that bacon? And just as importantly, what would you drink with your bacon?
Oh my. This came so quickly. I think I'm not that quite into pork actually, but bacon is, of course, we all know it's godly. And I think just standard like scrambled eggs and just fried bacon is my favorite version of bacon. I'm not that keen on putting bacon, for example, in burgers. For some reason, I don't feel it's right. I just want the pure sensation of just the bacon, I suppose.
So the breakfast standard.
I guess so, yeah. You especially should probably appreciate that.
I'm the opposite now. I don't want a burger if it doesn't have bacon in it.
Fair enough. And about the drink, I'm actually not a drinker. I don't actually drink alcohol mostly at all. I'm a strange Finn in that sense, but I'm quite certain someone is taking care of my quota in here.
And here I was expecting you would just start rambling off vodkas.
Yeah, I'm sorry, mate. Even I must have my flaws. I'm a failed Nordic people.
Well, we keep saying, well, at least Bam keeps saying, what kind of beer or cider do you want? And I guess non-alcoholics works just as fine. We've had a few of them.
I'm into soft drinks, actually. I think cola is my, worst vice. I guess you could say that. And maybe cola with a twist is my favorite drink of all time. That's just so simple. I think the best cola there is the Fentiman's Curiosity Cola. That's the best one I ever had. And that's my gold standard.
Yeah, G mentions that, we've had a few folks who didn't have an alcoholic answer. I think it was a few episodes back we interviewed some developers that were between the ages of, I want to say, 16 and 19. And here in the US, it's not even old enough to buy alcohol. So, no worries.
Sure thing.
I don't know. The worst we've done is Bam asking a diabetic what kind of alcohol he wants. That was a little bit...
Ouch.
Yeah. We like to bring it up because then he can feel the pang of it again. That was a bit of a mistake.
Yeah. repent for your sins.
But the guy knew that it was coming and kind of was okay with it, I guess. And we've asked people of various origins where they don't eat bacon, what kind of bacon they want. So let's just say we've been all over the map with this. But no, a breakfast-styled bacon and eggs, that's classic. Let's go with that. Although I might hold off on the Coca-Cola for breakfast. That's...
Well, maybe not for... Yeah, let's say that maybe not for the breakfast. Maybe just orange juice or just plain water or sparkly water for the breakfast, maybe. I don't know.
Well, you can always have breakfast for dinner.
Well, fair enough, yeah.
And there's the American.
Yeah, screw your old world stuff. We do what we want.
Goody. Dragst, it's been awesome having you on. As I said, we've already been chatting for an hour, and I'm sure we could chat for a few more if you wanted. But all good things must come to an end, and as must this interview.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's been cool. It's been really nice hearing about your game. It's been fun looking at it. I haven't played it yet, but I do have an intention to do so because I kind of like city building and resource management games. Although I'm not necessarily story driven, I'm just the kind who just wants to plug down and play a game for a month at a time. So I'll probably wait until the free roam, the free sandboxy things get added to it so you can really just play it for eternity. But it's different, and that's kind of what I go for in this one. That's what brought it to me, at least, why I'm here. It looks different enough to not just be another SimCity clone, not just be another Settlers clone, etc. It brings something else to the table, and it should, because there's too many of the other ones.
It definitely isn't just one of those clones, and may I just say you can skip all the dialogue with just pressing ESC, so you don't really have to worry about reading too much text.
Well, and for myself, I'll probably be playing this throughout the week because we're going to record some footage of it for the show, so you guys will get to watch it as we're talking about it. But I'm actually looking forward to seeing some of the story elements and so the humor that's wrapped up in that. And the thing I enjoy about games like this, I do play a lot of AAA games and great graphics and all that. But the nice thing about something like this is it's a bit of a palate cleanser, and you can still have a great time with it. So I'm definitely looking forward to playing this for a little bit.
Hope you like it. I'm quite sure you will. Of course, give it a spin, and I'm sure you're gonna love it. But I'm biased, but I'm still going to say that. And you can always get a refund if it's not for your liking. And we appreciate all the support we can get, and the more support we can get, the more features and stuff we can make, the faster we can make them. And I'm really looking forward to making Hexters one hell of a ride.